John Anderson led a quiet, measured life. In the small town of Oak Creek, Wisconsin, he taught history at the local college and lived in a cozy house on the outskirts of town. His only companion was a German shepherd named Rex, whom he had adopted from a shelter several years ago. Jan and Rex were inseparable. Every morning they would run together through the neighborhood, climbing steep hills and crossing rushing streams. In the evenings, Rex lay at John's feet while he graded student papers, often late into the night. John's house was surrounded by dense forest, creating the perfect atmosphere of seclusion and peace, but sometimes at night the howling of wolves in the distance would make Rex uneasy. John had a good friend named Sarah Thompson. She lived next door and often visited, bringing the smell of freshly baked apple pie with her. Sarah worked as a veterinarian and always brought Rex treats, special dog biscuits she made herself. John appreciated their friendship but never thought of anything more, though he sometimes noticed Sarah's thoughtful glances. One day, Jan decided to go on a week-long hiking trip in the mountains. He had been hesitant about this trip for a long time because he didn't want to leave Rex alone at night. He would toss and turn in bed, imagining Rex whining at the door, waiting for his return. Kind Sarah offered to take care of the dog. Welcome to Spa Stories, where the line between the known and the unknown fades, and the shadows whisper truths untold. Tonight, we delve into the primal connection between humans and animals, a bond forged in trust, sometimes fear, and always in mystery. And John gratefully accepted, feeling relieved by her offer. Before leaving, John gave Rex a long hug, burying his face in the dog's soft fur, and promised to come back soon. He left Sarah detailed instructions on how to care for the dog, including Rex's favorite toys and his special diet. John set off on his journey with a light heart, but kept looking back until the house disappeared from view. The first few days in the mountains were wonderful. John enjoyed the silence and beauty of nature, climbing steep slopes and admiring breathtaking views from the peaks. He walked a lot, read books by the campfire, and pondered life under the starry sky. Every evening, Sarah sent him photos of Rex and messages about how they were doing, including funny stories about Rex trying to catch a squirrel in the garden. On the fifth day of the hike, while John was tackling an especially difficult section of the trail, he received a troubling message from Sarah. She wrote that she had urgent matters at the clinic, a complicated operation on a horse, and wouldn't be able to visit Rex that evening. Jan became anxious, his hands trembling as he reread the message, but he decided that nothing bad would happen if the dog was left alone for one night, although the thought of Rex being lonely kept gnawing at him. The next morning, John started packing to go home, hastily stuffing things into his backpack. He felt a strange unease, as if a chill was running down his spine, and decided to return a day early. As he descended the mountain, he stumbled several times, his thoughts about home and Rex distracting him from careful walking the whole way home. He couldn't shake the feeling of dread, gripping the steering wheel tightly and even speeding on the deserted roads. When John arrived at his house of the street, he immediately knew something was wrong. The front door was ajar, and there were scattered items on the porch, a torn book, pieces of a broken vase. John's heart started pounding faster as he entered the house and called for Rex. His voice shook with fear. There was no answer, only the echo of his own voice bouncing off the walls with each step inside the house. John's horror grew. Things were strewn all over the floor as if a hurricane had swept through the place. Furniture was overturned, curtains torn from their rods. There were strange dark stains on the walls, and John was horrified to realize it might be blood. When he reached the living room, his breath caught. Walls and floors were indeed splattered with blood, as if a brutal fight had taken place. John, in a panic, began shouting for Rex, his cry turning into a rasp. He searched every room, tripping over scattered items and broken glass. In the bedroom, he saw his clothes ripped apart and claw marks on the door. Finally, he heard a faint whimper coming from the basement. His heart was ready to jump out of his chest. As he rushed down the stairs, descending into the basement, John found Rex huddled in the farthest corner. The dog was trembling all over and looked terrified, his usually shiny coat ruffled and stained with blood in places. But it seemed Rex was not seriously injured. Seeing his owner, the dog weakly wagged his tail but didn't move from his spot, John rushed to Rex, hugging him tightly as tears streamed down his face. He petted the dog, whispering words of comfort, trying to calm both Rex and himself. Gradually, Jan began to understand what had happened. Someone had broken into his home, and Rex, loyal to his master, had tried to protect the territory. John imagined his brave dog confronting the intruders, and his heart swelled with pride and fear. With trembling hands, John took out his phone and called the police, his voice breaking as he explained the situation. Then he dialed Sarah's number, struggling to hit the right buttons. She arrived within minutes, her car tires squealing on the driveway. Sarah rushed into the house, pale and frightened, her eyes widening in seeing the state of the house and John sitting on the floor next to Rex. She broke down in tears, sinking down beside them and hugging both of them. The police arrived quickly, their sirens shattering the silence of the quiet, remote neighborhood. The officers inspected the house, their faces growing more serious with each room they entered. They collected evidence, photographing the signs of struggle in gathering blood samples. A detective questioned John and Sarah at length, noting down every detail. The officers praised Rex for his bravery, with one even kneeling down to pet the dog and promised to do everything possible to catch the criminals. John couldn't stay in his home after what had happened. The smell of blood and the sight of the destruction made him nauseous. Sarah insisted that he and Rex stay with her for a while. John gratefully agreed, unable to deal with the situation on his own. They packed the essentials, and John had to carry Rex to the car, gently persuading the dog to leave the basement. The next few days passed in a haze. John tried to return to work but couldn't concentrate. His thoughts kept drifting back to the ransacked house and frightened Rex. His students noticed his distraction but chalked it up to exhaustion after the hike. Sarah even took time off work to be with him and Rex. She cooked meals, paying special attention to John's favorite dishes, walked the dog, patiently waiting for Rex to get used to the new surroundings, and simply stayed by his side whenever John needed support. On the third day after the robbery, a man with multiple dog bites came to the local hospital. His arms and legs were covered in deep wounds, and there were claw marks on his face. A nurse who had heard about the incident at John's house immediately suspected something was wrong and reported it to the police. The police quickly arrived at the hospital and began questioning the suspect. At first, the man denied everything, claiming he had been bitten by a stray dog, but under the pressure of evidence and skillful questioning by the detective, he unexpectedly broke down and confessed to everything. He described how he and two accomplices had planned to rob the house, which seemed empty but were met with fierce resistance from a large dog. Moreover, he gave up his accomplices, naming their names and addresses. Within a few days, all the participants in the robbery were arrested and brought to justice. It turned out that this was a gang responsible for a series of burglaries in the area. Thanks to Rex's bravery, not only was the robbery prevented, but dangerous criminals were also caught. The news of the robbers' arrest brought John some relief, but he still couldn't bring himself to return to his home. Every time he tried to approach the front door, he began to shake. Seeing his condition, Sarah offered to help with the repairs and cleaning. She understood that John needed not only to physically restore the house, but also to banish the terrible memories from it. Together, they spent several weeks putting John's house back in order. They painted the walls, choosing bright, cheerful colors to change the atmosphere of the home. John and Sarah repaired the furniture together, turning it into a kind of therapy. They spent hours talking about design, picking out new curtains and rugs to completely transform the interior. Replacing the damaged items with new ones became an exciting adventure. In local stores, Rex was always by their side, as if guarding them, gradually returning to his old joyful self. In the process of working on the house together, John and Sarah grew even closer. They talked a lot, sharing their thoughts and feelings, working side by side, not only to restore the house but also to restore John's peace of mind. John began to notice how much he valued Sarah's presence in his life, how her smile brightened even the darkest corners of his thoughts. One evening, as they sat on the renovated porch after a long day's work, watching the sunset and sipping lemonade, John took Sarah's hand. At that moment, he suddenly realized that his feelings for her had grown into something more than just friendship. With gratitude and tenderness, John looked into Sarah's eyes and they both understood that their lives would never be the same while brave Rex peacefully slept curled up at their feet. Remember, the next time you hear the rustle of leaves or feel unseen eyes watching, it could be more than just your imagination.